There's always that one person you just can't get out of your mind, no matter how hard you try.
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely universal experience.
Right. You replay conversations, imagine scenarios, and think about them more than you want to. But this isn't random. There's a psychological reason behind it. Welcome to our deep dive today, where we're basically going on a mission to unpack the mechanics of why certain people get absolutely stuck in our heads.
Yeah, we are. And we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today to figure out what's actually happening under the hood.
I mean, we've got a lot to cover.
We do. We're looking at clinical psychology, some neurobiology research out of Georgetown University, some really eye-opening data on attachment styles, and deep frameworks on trauma bonding.
Wow.
Yeah, the goal is to kind of move past that vague idea of just being hung up on someone and look at the actual neurological gears turning in your head.
Because I think everyone listening has been there, right? You tell your friends you're over it, you delete the number, but your brain is still running this background program. So why does our mind refuse to let certain people go, even when we explicitly, consciously want to move on?
Well, to answer that, we actually have to travel back to the 1920s. There was this Russian psychologist named Bluma Zygarnik, and she made a really simple but profound observation while she was sitting in this busy, chaotic restaurant.
Okay, a restaurant. What'd she see?
She watched these waiters balancing incredibly complex orders in their heads. Like they had no notepads, but they remembered who ordered the fish, who wanted extra lemon, who had the allergy.
Oh, wow. Just entirely from memory.
Right. They retained it perfectly, but the moment she paid her bill and the transaction was fully settled, she actually asked her waiter what she had just ordered.
Let me guess. The waiter drew a complete blank.
Completely vanished. I mean, the order was wiped from his memory the exact second the bill was paid. And this cognitive phenomenon became known as the Zygarnik effect.
The Zygarnik effect.
Yeah, and it basically dictates that our minds cling to unfinished tasks far more aggressively than completed ones. When a situation lacks closure, the brain stays in this active loading mode.
Right.
It basically views the unresolved issue as a puzzle it is biologically mandated to solve.
That makes the modern dating landscape look like an absolute psychological minefield.
Mm.
I mean, think about getting ghosted.
Oh, it's the perfect example.
You go on 3 great dates, everything feels electric, and then silence. Your brain is sitting there with a massive blinking question mark. It's exactly like having 50 browser tabs open on your computer at the same time.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. You might be staring at a blank desktop, but your fan is whirring at maximum volume and your battery is draining because that background processing never, ever stops.
And that is the cruel trick your mind plays on you. You sit there feeling this intense longing and you assume, like, wow, I must really miss this person. I must really be in love.
But that's not it at all.
No. Often, your mind is simply craving completion. The brain is an efficiency machine. An open loop is a huge threat to that efficiency. So when something feels unfinished, your brain keeps going back to it, trying to find an answer that was never given.
Which is so frustrating. But, it's not just a cognitive checklist, right? It doesn't just feel like I forgot to pick up milk at the grocery store.
Right, there's a physiological component.
Exactly. There's a very real physical ache attached to these memories. My chest feels tight. My stomach drops. And that really leads into the physical reality of what we're talking about. The stronger the emotion, the deeper the memory sticks, whether it's love, confusion, or pain.
Which brings us to the mesolimbic system. That's the brain's reward circuit. The research from Georgetown University details this cocktail of chemicals beautifully.
Okay, break that down for us. What's the cocktail?
Well, when you first meet someone you're intensely drawn to, it doesn't actually register as just happiness in the body. It acts as a stressor.
Wait, really? A stressor?
Yeah. Because there's uncertainty, your brain releases cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone.
So my palms are sweating and my heart is racing because my brain literally thinks I'm in danger.
Essentially, yes. You're in a state of high alert, but simultaneously your brain releases dopamine, the reward neurotransmitter. So when they smile at you or laugh at your joke, you get a massive dopamine hit.
Okay, I see.
The cortisol heightens your focus entirely onto this person, and the dopamine rewards you for interacting with them.
Cortisol and dopamine together sounds like an absolutely exhausting roller coaster.
It is, and it's highly reinforcing. And then the brain adds 2 more potent chemicals to the mix: oxytocin and vasopressin.
Oxytocin, that's the cuddle hormone, right?
Exactly. It facilitates empathy, trust, and that warm, cozy sense of like, we belong together.
And what about vasopressin?
Vasopressin, on the other hand, drives territorial behaviors and mate guarding. It's that sudden primal flash of jealousy or protectiveness you feel when someone else hits on them. Yeah, the combination of all four, cortisol, dopamine, oxytocin, and vasopressin, creates this incredibly strong biochemical glue.
Wait, I'm stuck on something here. If this cocktail is universal, why does it hit some people so much harder than others?
That is a very good question.
Because, I mean, some people get a crush and they're totally fine. Other people get a crush and they completely fall apart checking their phone every 30 seconds. Is it just random biology, or is there a reason my brain might react to a text message like it's life or death?
That is exactly where your early childhood enters the chat. The way our brain handles that chemical rush is largely shaped by our primary caregivers.
Or we're talking about attachment styles now.
We are. This is rooted in John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth's foundational work on attachment styles. Basically, how your parents or guardians responded to your needs when you were an infant creates a permanent blueprint for how you handle intimacy as an adult.
Okay, let's break those down really quickly for the listener because I know they pop up everywhere in pop psychology right now.
Sure. Broadly speaking, there are four main styles. Secure attachment means you view relationships as a safe harbor. You're comfortable with intimacy and independence.
That's the goal.
Right. Then there's anxious attachment, which is like clinging to a life raft in a storm. You desperately crave intimacy but are terrified of abandonment.
Got it. And the avoidant one.
Avoidant attachment is pushing the raft away. You value independence so much that intimacy feels suffocating. And finally, disorganized attachment is wanting the raft but being terrified it's going to sink. It's a chaotic mix of desiring love but fearing the person providing it.
The sources actually highlight a really compelling study on this, looking at 120 young adults. The researchers wanted to see how these underlying blueprints actually impacted relationship satisfaction in the real world.
Yes, and the findings were stark. The study revealed a significant negative correlation between an anxious attachment style and relationship satisfaction.
Meaning they're just unhappier in general.
Meaning individuals who constantly fear abandonment experience dramatically lower happiness in their relationships. They're hypervigilant.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're constantly scanning their partner's tone of voice, their text response time, their body language, looking for any subtle sign that they are about to be left behind. That constant threat scanning creates endless, exhausting anxiety.
I have to push back a little on the demographics here, though. Did the study find that this affects one group more than another? Like, do men and women experience this anxiety differently, or does the stress of your career make it worse?
That is arguably the most fascinating takeaway from the data. They found absolutely zero significant differences in relationship satisfaction or attachment styles based on gender.
Wait, none at all.
None. And they found zero difference based on work status. It didn't matter if you were a high-powered CEO or unemployed, male or female. The underlying attachment style was the driving factor across the board.
So it's universal.
It operates like a universal human operating system, running quietly in the background, dictating how we interpret love and risk.
So tying this back to the listener who's sitting there right now, overthinking a text from 3 days ago, what does this actually mean for them?
Wow.
It means that sometimes the intense chemical rush you feel and the anxiety driving it isn't actually about the reality of the person in front of you. It's about a story you've written about them, colored by your own childhood blueprint,
Exactly.
which leads to a pretty massive realization. Sometimes you're not thinking about the real person. You're thinking about the version you created in your mind.
And psychology has a very specific word for that state of mind: limerence. The term was coined by psychologist Dorothy Tenov in the late 70s.
Limerence, okay.
Yeah, limerence is an involuntary, obsessive, all-consuming state. But here is the critical distinction that catches people off guard. Limerence is not love. Limerence is the desire to be desired.
Are you sure about that? Because I can hear people screaming at their speakers right now saying, but it feels like love. I would do anything for them. How can you actually tell the difference when you're in the middle of it?
It's incredibly difficult to tell from the inside because the physical sensations are identical, but the intention is completely different. True love is fundamentally concerned with the other person's actual well-being, their growth, their happiness, even if it doesn't directly benefit you.
Right. And limerence.
Limerence is almost entirely self-referential. Tem outlined 3 stages: infatuation, crystallization, and deterioration.
So in that middle stage, the crystallization.
That's where you experience these ecstatic highs and agonizing lows based entirely on whether you think the limerent object, the person you're obsessed with, reciprocates your feelings. Every action they take is analyzed as a clue to how they feel about you. The uncertainty is the engine driving the obsession.
Angela Sitka's clinical work does a fantastic job of explaining this mirage. She outlines 4 types of people we typically get stuck on in this limerent state. And, spoiler alert, none of them involve healthy mutual connection.
No, they don't. Let's walk through them because they perfectly illustrate how we project our own needs.
Yeah, let's do it. First, there's scarcity attraction. This is getting stuck on people who are fundamentally unavailable. Maybe they're already married, or they live in a different country, or they're just emotionally walled off.
And the trap here is that their unavailability actually intensifies the longing. You convince yourself that if you can just win them over, it proves your ultimate worth.
Exactly. Second is unrequited attachment. This is the classic I can fix them dynamic. The person has explicitly stated they do not want a serious relationship or they treat you poorly, but you hold on to this belief that if you just love them enough or endure enough, they'll eventually see the light and change.
Which is a hallmark of the anxious attachment style we discussed earlier.
Right. Third is forbidden or obstacle-driven idealization. This one is insidious because the pursuit itself creates the perceived value.
Oh, totally.
Think of a workplace romance where you could get fired, or a massive age gap. The obstacles make it feel like this epic Shakespearean romance. But really, it's just logistical stress masking as passion. If you remove the obstacles and just had to go grocery shopping together on a Tuesday, the spark would completely vanish.
It would evaporate. And finally, there's the symbolic idealization. This happens when the person represents something you desperately want for yourself. Maybe they have the career you want, the confidence you lack, or they remind you of a figure from your past whose approval you never got.
So you're basically projecting.
You're projecting your own unfulfilled needs onto them, like a movie screen. You're totally ignoring the reality that they aren't meeting your actual relationship needs in the present moment.
So we become addicted to the fantasy. We become obsessed with the pursuit itself. But if uncertainty naturally fuels this idealization, what happens when the uncertainty isn't just an accident? What do you mean? What happens when someone actively weaponizes that uncertainty against you? When someone gives you attention, then pulls away, it creates a loop, and your brain keeps chasing that feeling.
Yeah, now we're entering darker territory. This brings us to a psychological concept called intermittent reinforcement. To truly grasp why this is so devastatingly powerful, we should look at Teal Swan's brilliant analogy of the rat in the laboratory.
Paint the picture for us. What happens to the rat?
Okay, imagine a rat in a cage. Inside the cage is a small lever. The researchers set it up so that every single time the rat presses the lever, a food pellet drops out. This is called continuous reinforcement.
Okay, so the rat's pretty happy.
Totally calm. It knows the food is always there. It presses the lever when it's hungry, eats, and then wanders off to groom itself for sleep. Now imagine a different setup. The rat presses the lever and absolutely nothing happens. No pellet, ever.
So what does the rat do?
It gets frustrated for a few minutes, but eventually it gives up. It ignores the lever entirely.
Because there's no reward. The brain learns the action is completely useless.
Precisely. But the third scenario is where the psychology gets hijacked. In the intermittent reinforcement experiment, the lever is rigged unpredictably. The rat presses the lever and gets a pellet. It presses again, nothing. Presses 3 more times, nothing. Presses a 4th time, 3 pellets drop out. The reward is randomized.
It's a slot machine.
It is the exact same mechanism.
That is why being left on read feels so agonizing. You are literally sitting at the casino, pulling the lever, hoping for a jackpot. You sit there pulling the lever, losing over and over, but the unpredictable wins, the flashing lights, the sudden payout create a massive dopamine spike that continuous winning just doesn't produce.
And the results on the rat are tragic. The rat becomes anxiously obsessed. It stops sleeping. It stops grooming itself. Its physical health deteriorates because it cannot stop frantically pressing the lever.
Wow.
The unpredictability creates a biological addiction. When you translate that to human relationships, the win is a warm text back after 3 days of total silence. It's a phenomenal romantic date following a week of cold, dismissive behavior.
You become addicted to the unpredictable validation from the person who is simultaneously causing your distress.
Yes. And this is the foundational mechanism of trauma bonding. According to clinical psychologists, a trauma bond forms in abusive or highly toxic dynamics when the abuser alternates affection and safety with abuse, criticism, or withdrawal. The abuser becomes both the poison and the antidote.
The hot and cold trap.
Exactly. Over time, the victim's nervous system is conditioned to associate those brief, unpredictable good moments with ultimate survival and safety. It physically rewires the brain to resemble a severe substance addiction.
That is terrifying.
The dopamine flows heavily during the affectionate honeymoon periods, and the cortisol spikes dangerously during the withdrawal or abuse.
This is so heavy to process because
Yeah.
you realize it's not just someone making bad choices in a partner. Their nervous system is literally hijacked.
Victims end up walking on eggshells. They start rationalizing the terrible behavior, blaming themselves for not pressing the lever the right way. They slowly lose their own identity, their friendships, their self-esteem, because their entire biological system is locked in a state of survival, desperately waiting for the next pellet of affection to relieve the immense pain the abuser just caused.
So if we pull back and look at the whole board, our brains are caught in this slot machine loop of limerence, chemical addiction, and intermittent reinforcement. If we know this, why do we keep overthinking it? Why do we sit in our bedrooms analyzing text messages from months ago?
Because overthinking feels like action.
Right, overthinking gives the illusion of control. Like if you think enough, you'll figure everything out.
That is the ultimate trap of the intellectualizing mind. We operate under the false assumption that if we just analyze the data long enough, if we dissect every word they said, every micro-expression, we will solve the puzzle and secure the reward. We think we can outsmart our own biology.
But you can't, can you?
No. Tom Bellamy, an academic neuroscientist who focuses on limerence recovery, points out that you simply cannot think your way out of a neurochemical addiction.
Because your brain is working against you.
Exactly. During this state of obsession, your brain's reward system is highly sensitized. It's screaming for a fix. Simultaneously, your executive, rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, is desensitized. The brakes are literally off. You know you shouldn't check their social media, you know it will hurt, but you do it anyway because the impulse control center is offline.
Okay, this is the million-dollar question for the listener right now. If your brain is hijacked by the Zeigarnik effect, holding open browser tabs, flooded with a chaotic mix of dopamine and cortisol, and trapped in an intermittent reinforcement slot machine, what is the actual escape hatch? How do you break the spell?
Bellamy and the clinical sources provide very actionable, science-based strategies, but they require intense discipline. The absolute first step, if it is at all possible, is no contact. You have to treat this exactly like a chemical addiction. You cannot heal from a severe burn while you are still resting your hand on the hot stove.
But what if you can't go no contact? What if you work with them or, co-parent with them?
Then you implement staged withdrawal. You interact only when absolutely necessary, with zero emotional exchange. Gray rocking. You must cut off the source of the intermittent reinforcement to give your nervous system a chance to return to a baseline state of calm.
Okay, so you cut off the supply. But what about the Zeigarnik effect? All those open browser tabs of things we never got to say, the apologies we never received.
You have to create your own closure. You cannot wait for them to hand you the missing puzzle piece because they probably never will. The clinical recommendation here is writing the unsent letter. Pour every single thought, every ounce of anger, every lingering question onto the paper. Hold nothing back.
And then send it.
No. And then physically destroy it. Burn it or shred it. By taking the thoughts out of the loop in your head and turning them into a physical completed action, you are hacking the Zeigarnik effect. You're tricking your brain into registering the task as completed. You close the tab yourself.
That is incredibly empowering. You aren't reliant on them for your peace of mind. And Angela Sitka has a great technique for dealing with the thoughts when they inevitably pop back up a week later, because they absolutely will. She calls it diffusion.
The leaves on a stream visualization.
Exactly. The visualization is just so vivid. Instead of fighting the intrusive thoughts, which just gives them more energy, you visualize the thoughts as leaves floating down a river. A memory of your ex pops into your head. Don't panic. Don't fight it. Put the memory on a leaf and watch it float by.
That's beautiful.
You don't grab it. You don't examine the leaf. You just acknowledge it exists and let the current take it away.
Detachment is the goal. You are observing your brain's misfiring without participating in it. And Bellamy suggests taking it one step further to actively reprogram the neural pathways. spoil the fantasy.
Ooh, what does that look like in practice?
When you catch yourself daydreaming about the good times, the honeymoon phase, the great dates deliberately force your mind to immediately focus on the negative experiences. Focus on the crippling anxiety they caused you. Focus on the times they ignored you, the disrespect, the pain of the confusion.
So you're rewiring the association.
Yes, you have to actively, aggressively train your subconscious that this person is a source of discomfort and danger, not a source of reward. You have to break the idealization by flooding it with reality.
It sounds like taking the slot machine, unplugging it, and reminding yourself how much money it stole from you.
That is a perfect way to look at it. You have to demystify the machine.
So what does this all mean in the end? When you synthesize Bellamy's neuroscience and Sitka's clinical psychology, they arrive at the exact same destination.
Mm.
You have to replace the unhealthy reward with a healthy one. You can't just evict this person from your brain and leave an empty vacuum, because nature abhors a vacuum.
Right, your brain will just find someone else to obsess over.
Exactly. You have to build a purposeful life, reconnect with the friends you neglected while you were obsessing, dive into a passion project, focus intensely on your own growth. You have to make your own life so engaging that the fantasy of them pales in comparison.
Because as long as they are the most dramatic, interesting thing in your mental landscape, your dopamine system will keep pulling you back to them. You have to give your brain a healthier, more fulfilling target.
But the truth is, some answers don't come from thinking more. They come from letting go. And once you understand that, your mind finally gets quiet.
Absolutely. And next time you find yourself obsessing over someone, ask yourself a hard question. Are you really missing them? Or are they just acting as a mirror, reflecting an emotional need, a childhood wound, or a desire for completion that you've been neglecting to give yourself?
That is a deeply powerful question to leave off on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take a deep breath, close those open mental browser tabs, and reclaim your focus. You've got this. We'll catch you on the next one.